Yo, what's good? Quick intro. This is gonna be more of a video for beginners. I'm gonna go over the basics of music theory you should know as a producer, and I'm gonna be talking about more practical stuff. I'm not gonna go into theory that much, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, let's get it. So when you have a note like this, you can either move it up or down by these steps. Now, one of these steps is called a semitone, and one semitone is 100 cents, which is really useful. For example, if you have a loop in the key of D minor and you're playing around with the pitch and the loop pitched up 300 cents sounds the best to you. Basically what you did is pitched the whole loop up 3 semitones. So if it was in D minor and you pitched it up 300 cents, the loop is now in the key of F minor. Scales are essentially just groups of notes that sound good together. The most popular ones are the major and minor scales, and the easiest way to remember them is both C major and A minor only contain white keys. So something like this, and let's say for example you want to make a melody in G minor. To get the G minor scale, you first want to start on A, fill out every white key till the next A, then select your scale and move the scale until the first note of the scale is G, and now you got a G minor scale. Now, when it comes to building chords, there's sort of two ways to build chords. The first way is to just start on any note in the scale and to skip every other note in the scale. So I'm starting on G and I just built a basic triad. Now I can just keep going. I can make a 7th. This is a 9th, this is an 11th, but after a while it starts sounding messy. Now, when you build chords like this, sometimes they won't sound how you want them to sound, and in that case, you start on any note in the scale, and then after that, you ignore the scale and you follow these rules. So to make a major triad, you place a note, you skip 3 semitones, place a note down, skip 2 semitones, place a note down, and this is a major triad. And if you want to make a minor triad, it's pretty much the same, just the reverse order. So you skip 2 semitones, place a note down, skip 3 semitones, place a note down, and now this is a major triad, this is a minor triad. Now you can also make diminished and augmented chords. Diminished chords are basically just chords where the notes are 2 semitones apart, and augmented chords are chords where the notes are 3 semitones apart. Now these chords don't sound that good on their own, but you can use them in a chord progression as passing chords or right before like the last chord hits. Now, when it comes to chord progressions, first you want to figure out what genre you want to make. And let's say, for example, you want to make trap. You can go on the internet and look up most common, most popular, most used trap progressions, and you'll just get like a list of a bunch of chord progressions used in major songs and just like progressions most used in trap in general, and all of those progressions will be marked with numbers or Roman numerals. Now let's take for example the 1-5 chord progression. The numbers represent chords. For example, this is a 1-5 chord progression. Now this chord is the first chord or the 1 because the bass note, the root note, or the first note, whatever you want to call it, of the chord is the first note of the scale, and this is the 5th chord or the 5 chord because the first note of the chord is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th note in the scale. Now when you just build chord progressions like this, they will sound basic. Well, actually, let me show you. Now this doesn't necessarily sound bad. I mean, it sounds bad because I'm using alpha keys, but it doesn't sound bad as it sounds basic. Now there's a few ways you can make your chord progression sound more interesting. The first thing is you can select all the bass notes of the chords and either pitch them down an octave or copy them and then pitch them down an octave. This basically just gives your chord progression a bit more depth. It makes it sound more layered. Now the next thing you can do is mess with the voicing of the chords. Now the voicing of a chord is basically how the notes in the chord are arranged, and one really useful thing you can use here is chord inversions. A chord inversion is basically taking any note in the chord and either pitching it up an octave or down an octave. In this case, I'm gonna take this top note and pitch it down an octave, and I'm gonna take the top notes here and pitch them down. Now what I did here, basically what you want to do with most of your chord progressions, not all of them, but with most of them, you want to make, so for example, imagine you're playing your chord progression on a MIDI or a piano. When you're switching chords, you want your fingers to move as little as possible. And when you try and follow this rule, your chord progressions will instantly just sound more unique and more complex. Now this, I mean, it still sounds pretty ass because I'm using alpha keys. Hold on. See, now this sounds 10 times better. This sound, by the way, is a one shot from the sound kit Prabha Polk and I have been working on for some time. I mean, by the time this video is up, the kit should be dropping in 2 days on Sunday, on 11th of September, or 9/11, you know. They really had to do the whole Twin Towers thing like on the same day as we're dropping the kit, but that's whatever. But this kit is stacked. It has a bunch of one shots, drum breaks, brick loops, accents, textures. It's dropping on Sunday, this Sunday, 11th of September. So yeah, tune in. And that's pretty much it. I mean, one thing you can also do is tack notes. So for example, in the first chord, the chord uses G, so I can use G an octave higher as well. It makes the chord sound like a bit bigger, a bit fuller. Actually, there's one more thing I want to talk about. I've seen a lot of YouTubers do this. So they'll make a 1 and then they'll copy the chord and either pitch it up or down 5 semitones. That's a really cool trick, but essentially what it does, if you pitch it up 5 semitones, you're making a 1/4 chord progression, and if you're pitching the chord down 5 semitones, you're essentially making the 1/5 chord progression. And that's basically it when it comes to like the basics of music theory you need to know as a producer. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace.